Estamos convidando você para uma nova rodada de afeto, convergência e aprendizado. Vamos juntos mudar o olhar e o entendimento sobre o transtorno do espectro do autismo. Para isso, este ano propomos juntar dois conceitos essenciais para o desenvolvimento humano: a cultura e a ciência, para promover um grande encontro onde a arte, o movimento, a música, a literatura e outras manifestações culturais vão se somar aos avanços e às novas proposições do saber científico. Vem aí o maior abraço do mundo. Um evento simultâneo ao terceiro Congresso Internacional sobre o Transtorno do Espectro do Autismo, voltado para o acolhimento, a flexibilidade, o aprendizado, a compreensão e o aprimoramento na convivência com pessoas autistas. Um momento de reflexão e afetividade para confirmar que ainda temos muito a aprender e que as crianças e pessoas autistas têm muito a nos ensinar. Amar para entender. Entender para amar. Garanta a sua participação.
Ok.
Olá a todos, tudo bem? Bem-vindos a mais um Desbravando Autismo, com a Caminho Azul, com o Dr. Caio Bujade. Hoje, uma edição especial do programa com a nossa querida Temple Graining e o seu amigo, né, o nosso querido Jason McAllister, ambos especialistas, autistas e especialistas em desenvolvimento e na relação do desenvolvimento com os animais, com a natureza. E eles vão estar no congresso com a gente, no Congresso Internacional do Autismo, e a gente conseguiu uma palhinha, uma entrevista com eles. A gente agradece muito que eles têm uma programação, né, muito apertada, e eles conseguiram um tempinho para falar com a gente, para que todos vocês pudessem ter acesso a essas informações e eles se apresentarem um pouco e do que eles vão falar no congresso. So, nice to meet you, Temple. Nice to meet you, Jason. We are very pleased to have you with us. And I will, if you could present to us about yourself.
Well, today I am a professor of animal science at Colorado State University and do research on animal behavior, animal welfare. Also work with industry. In fact, we're in the conference room of a meat plant right now. And that's why I'm here with Jason, because we work together on animal welfare.
Can you present yourself, Jason, for us?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jason McAllister. I'm the CEO of Cloverleaf Animal Welfare Systems. We're based in St. Joseph, Missouri. I've spent more than 30 years in the livestock handling industry and animal welfare. I was formerly the director of animal welfare for a large packing house. Yeah.
I will do a question, and you both can answer, but first Temple, then Jason. And do you think you work a lot with animal welfare and also development, neurodevelopment, and developing children and developing atypical children? Temple was talking about with us with how important it's education and to educate basic skills for autistics. But how do you see the importance of the nature and how to respect animals, and that idea of exposome, that environment, health, and the animal welfare and the human welfare being all together? How do you think about this theory?
Well, both are important. Also, if you do really good, animal welfare, good handling, animals are going to be more productive. Animals are going to have less bruises, better meat quality. And today we were out handling pigs, and they were doing a really good job. Jason's done a lot of work at the company that we're at right now. We both work in this field. This brings up another thing. I've worked for many, many years in the livestock industry, and I've worked with people that are in the industry, especially people who build things. Like I saw a piece of equipment today that was obviously all handmade, automated equipment for pork loins that somebody made by hand in a shop. And I have found that some of these people are undiagnosed autistics, and they are brilliant at making this stuff. And we actually need their skills. And I'm very concerned that, you know, at least in the US, a lot of schools have taken out the hands-on classes, taken the shop classes out, and these kids are playing video games when they ought to be building equipment for the food industry.
I think Temple's talked about it many times, but for me, it was my first view of animal slaughter and animal welfare was at a very young age. My family owned a slaughter facility. I was exposed to it, and I found it very fascinating from a very young age, that the part of slaughter, almost to the point at the time, you don't understand why you're fascinated with the things you're fascinated with, but it was very intriguing to me, and I have made a career out of it since then. But it brings up the point for me is that Temple was talking about these undiagnosed autistics and even diagnosed. She said it many times that you have to get that exposure. You have to find what's appealing to you, what interests you, what's going to hold your interest, no matter what, whether you're in the attention deficit column or you're in the autism column. You have to find what's appealing to you, what your interest is. I can talk to you for hours about my subject of interest, right? But if you want to talk about something that doesn't interest me, I will not have much time at all for that. So it's all about exposure. If I would have never been exposed to slaughter at that age, would I have the career that I have today? I don't know.
Well, I was exposed to art. I was very good at art. And when I was a young child, I loved to build things. You could make it out of cardboard, I made it. And then I grew up using tools. And actually, there's 3 different kinds of thinking in autism. I'm the visual thinker. I'm going to be good at the mechanical devices, art, understanding animals. Then you have the mathematical autistic person. They're the ones that bring you this computer that we're using right now to talk on. See, autism can come in a picture thinker type like me, or a mathematical pattern thinker. And then there's some that are verbal thinkers. They're very, very good at facts, like to be very good on working maybe selling cars or some other specialized thing, and they would know every model of a car. And I want to see people on the autism spectrum get out and get good careers. Because one of the things that's made life satisfying for me is having an interesting career where you're doing things to improve something. And one of the biggest concerns I've got right now, especially with fully verbal autistic teenagers, is they're not learning enough life skills. They aren't learning things like shopping, bank account, ordering food in restaurants, just talking to people, just basic life skills.
And do you think this is up to school, or parents could do that training?
Well, I think a lot of parents do too many things for their autistic kid. They kind of get locked into the label, and they don't think their child's capable of doing things. Because I have seen 16-year-olds doing well in school who have never gone shopping by themselves. I'm talking the most basic things here that they're not learning how to do.
And how do you handle frustration? Because there's this thing about autism, when you are frustrated and all the emotions come and you have to handle it. And do you think now that you have this huge experience in life, how do you think we can train frustration along the years?
Well, I had a lot of problems in high school where I got bullied and teased all the time. I was called all kinds of names like tape recorder because I would tend to say the same things over and over again. And the only places I was not bullied was where I had friends who shared interests. I'm a big believer in getting autistic kids and teenagers and adults involved in activities where there's something they have a shared interest. I just talked to a family last night, and one of the shared interests was making beadwork jewelry out of little small beads. Okay, that is something that people could do together as a shared interest. Now, when it comes to frustration and anger, people would call me names. I'd respond by throwing things, like I got kicked out of 9th grade for throwing a book at a girl. She called me a retard. And what I had to do is switch from anger to crying, because anger gets you in too much trouble. So that's what I did. And, there's many scientists at NASA that are probably on the autism spectrum. I have visited NASA. I have talked to many retired NASA space scientists, and they told me that many of the engineers in the control room for the moon project, for Apollo, were probably autistic. And, some moms will say, well, my boy cries. I said, good. NASA space scientists cried when the space shuttle was canceled. I watched a 60 Minutes TV show. They were crying and walking off camera. Well, you can have a job at NASA doing that. If you throw things, NASA will fire you.
What do you think, Jason, about frustration? I saw a presentation that you were talking about frustration and pigs. It was very
Yeah. I mean, for me, as younger frustration manifested in outbursts and anger. I mean, physical outbursts, anger. I was never really violent, but I would be yelling and just kind of have a meltdown kind of situations where you just absolutely lose control of what you're saying and what you're doing. You're so angry you can't see straight. As I've gotten older, I've been able to recognize some of the things some of those cues and when that's going to start, and I'm able to put those things aside and manage it, see it for what it is, and then say, okay, wait a minute, we're not going to go there. I'm not going to let that own me today. But that's absolutely dependent on my both my state of mind and my well-being. If I'm overly tired, if I'm sick, if there's anything else going on, I can easily revert back to that, angry, yelling person quickly, especially if I'm in a situation where I haven't had enough sleep or I'm not feeling good and I'm not in complete control of what's going on.
I get asked all the time, what motivated me to keep going? A lot of people thought I was stupid because I can't do higher math. It's the problem with visual thinkers, really bad at higher math. But what I found in working with the construction and the machine shops is a person that probably made this machine that I looked at today. There's a good chance probably not good at higher math either, but can figure out how mechanical things work. And if you watch the HBO movie, you'll see some of my early projects. And one of the things that motivated me, I wanted to prove I wasn't stupid. A lot of people thought I was stupid and I wasn't going to amount to anything. And I wanted to prove them wrong.
This made us very proud of being autistic, or very proud of being neurotypical when they how you build you construct all your knowledge on this will of being better, will of showing people that you can. And you did that alone, Temple. You did that. You haven't. This will came from inside of you. And there's a lot of people who doesn't have resources to go to therapy or medicine, and has to construct this will. Can you talk about this will that came from inside of you and change you? Because I saw that happens on early adolescence, not when you were a child. This will came in adolescence. Am I correct?
Well, and then we've now know that's rubbish. But I had some very good teachers, an excellent speech teacher. My mother was always pushing me to do new things. Like when I was a little kid, I would draw the same horse head over and over again. And she said, well, let's draw the whole horse. Take that thing the child's fixated on, expand it, expand it. Okay, we're going to draw the stable. We'll draw things associated with the horse. Expand that. Great third grade teacher. Also, mother taught me to read when I was in third grade. And we read a book out loud, just sounding out the words phonetically. It's all out loud reading. I had a great science teacher who got me motivated to study. He gave me interesting projects. I've had some very good mentors. Then finally, there was a contractor starting a small steel and concrete business that seeked me out to design jobs for him. He was another important mentor. He showed me how to get a business started. He showed me a whole lot of things.
Interesting, because you have to get some mentors, intimacy with persons who helped you and who believed in
Yeah.
And,
Well, the other thing I learned to do real early on, since kind of weird, was I learned to sell my work. The way I sold projects is I simply showed people my drawings, showed people photographs of jobs. I learned to sell my work rather than myself.
Interesting. This is interesting because the work is a part of you.
Yep. That's why I show off the drawings. I show off the pictures of finished projects. And people kind of look at it and go, ooh, you did that? Well, maybe you're not so weird after all.
And do you have something to talk about this will, Jason?
Well, I struggled with a lot of guilt and shame as a very young man, as being undiagnosed with attention disorder there, and I was always shamed as being the bad kid, the kid that wouldn't sit still, wouldn't do the work. It's the same story 1,000 times over. I'm sure you've heard, but I struggled with that, and I learned as a teenager to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time in my teenage years self-medicating and self-soothing with drugs and alcohol. I battled alcoholism until my mid-30s, where I was able to completely. That's my will moment, right? I was able to turn that over, get that taken care of, and I've been completely clean and sober for more than 12 years now, and that's a huge part of my story as far as will goes, and doing that. It wasn't just stopping drinking and taking drugs. It was all learning, going through all the therapy and going through all of the learning and reversing that emotional and mental damage that you'd done with the self-medication. So,
well, I've been taking antidepressant medication since my early 30s. All through my 20s, the anxiety and the panic attacks worsened and worsened. It was wrecking my health. I had nonstop colitis that wouldn't stop. That's why I was eating yogurt and Jell-O in the movie. And when I went on a low dose of disipramine, it's one of the older tricyclics, just taking a starter dose, 50 milligrams of disipramine. I've been on it now for 40 years. The anxiety stopped and a lot of the health issues cleared up. But I was just falling apart, worsened. They talk about autistic burnout. Well, I was at that stage, and the medication just saved me. I do have a chapter in my book, Thinking in Pictures, about my experiences with medication. If somebody wants to think about using antidepressants for anxiety, I'd recommend they read that chapter. I'm not just trying to sell the books. I think it's important that they read, my actual experiences. But I'll be 77 in August, and I don't even know if I'd be alive now if I hadn't gone on that medication. My health was so deteriorated.
And let's talk about house animals, like dogs, cats, and even farm animals, and the relationship with atypical children like autism. Do you
Well,
think?
I just talked to a mom this morning, and her child got involved with riding horses and told me that that's the best thing that he ever did. And he was so calm and really liked that activity.
Do you think did the relationship with animals improve development?
Well, and I think some of the things with the horses is rhythm and balancing. You're riding a horse, you've got a balance and there's rhythm. And those things seem to have good effects on the nervous system.
And on social brain, do you think it works on social brain either?
But that's for some, what I have found with the autistic kids' relationships with animals, there's a first type that absolutely loves them. Animals are the best thing. Then there's a second type, we're a little afraid at first, then they really get to love them.
Yeah.
And then there's some where due to sensory issues, they're not going to like the dog because you never know when it might bark. You know, I just
Yeah.
heard a dog bark in your background, as you can't totally control dogs.
But do you think we, even when the children has these issues, we can try to change that with time?
Well, there are some kids where getting a dog's the best thing that ever happened for some individuals. You know, autism is a big spectrum. The other thing that I think's really helped a lot of people, I've had parents say when their child finally got a job that they liked, I'll hear things like, he bloomed, he blossomed, he became an adult. Because this is one of the big problem areas I'm seeing now is they're not making the transfer to the job place. But I've been around now, I've been in the livestock industry for 50 years. First 30 years of my career, I worked with people that were building equipment and inventing equipment that I know are on the autism spectrum. I have been out to the big computer companies out in Silicon Valley. I've been to all of their corporate offices. Well, half those programmers are probably autistic, but they'd be the mathematical kinds of minds. And we actually need the skills. I'm hearing some very bad stuff lately of primary school students that are very good at math, but they're not moving them ahead in math. So they become bored and they become behavior problems because they're forced to do baby math when they should be moved way ahead in math. We need to be developing those math kids.
Do you think the incidence of autism is different from CDC data?
So I think what is different?
The incidence of autism.
Oh, yeah, about it going up. I think some of it's increased detection, where when does slightly nerdy become autism? Some of that would definitely increase detection. Because I'm seeing a lot of grandparents come up to me and they discover they're autistic. When the kids get diagnosed, there's some concern about contaminants in the environment, but I think a very big portion of it is increased detection, especially in the individuals with no speech delay. I had significant speech delay.
Yeah, I made a diagnose recently with a 94 years old elderly person. His daughter is autistic, and his granddaughter is autistic. There, so there's this generation of autistic persons, and it's very interesting. Jason, what do you think about the animals, the house animals and farm animals relationship with development?
For me, I think it's just my particular brand of my interest. It's my interest point. I found, I was lucky enough to be exposed to Temple's teachings at a young point in my career, where she explained the things in a way that I could understand what was going on with the animals, and I was quickly able to adapt and understand and see what she was saying was true and it was happening. Whereas some of my neurotypical colleagues, couldn't make that, quick visual thought process or follow through and see what was actually happening around me. And it played in, for me, it just played into my already, my particular interest. So that was an advancement of my particular interest. I don't know necessarily that animals are exactly the way to go for neurodivergence or, of any classification. What we're talking about really is finding their particular interest point.
But the thing you got to emphasize is, how can you get interested in something if you're not exposed?
That's right.
Now, I was exposed to musical instruments and I had music lessons. I was hopeless. I could never figure out how to play a little flute. That did not work for me. Art, when I was very young, I was exposed to that and I took off with art. And I love to build things and make things. But kids have to be exposed to different things to find out what they might be interested in. My exposure to cattle was all started in high school, mostly at my aunt's ranch. And my boarding school had a 9-cow dairy. And I was milking cows there when I was 14 years old. You see, that's exposure. I think a lot of kids today aren't getting enough exposure to things. I'm seeing too many kids today growing up that have never used a tool. There's a lot of things out there to get interested in, but you can't get interested unless you get exposed. Then the next step is mentoring. Exposure, then mentoring. And my mother mentored my interest in art and expanded it.
I agree. I think that they're removing some of the, at least in the U.S., they've removed almost all of the hands-on portions, the physical stuff, the wood shop, the metal shop, the auto shop. These things that when I went to high school were still available, and you could go out and you could be exposed even just a little bit to certain things, certain parts of engineering or certain parts of this or that during your high school curriculum, and that gave you some exposure. Today, it's pretty straight curriculum. To Temple's point, if you're never exposed to it, how will you understand or find your particular interest? You're going to end up in the basement playing video games.
Well, this is the thing that I think is a real concern. And one of the things we talked about today in this plant is the difficulty of getting good maintenance people. I just went into the Denver airport the other day and they had big advertisements on the electronic billboard for maintenance positions at the Denver airport. We need these skills. And for my kind of thinker, that is a visual thinker, the mechanical things, broken elevators, broken escalators.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that all over everywhere. And then you got your mathematical minds. And we need mathematical minds to stay ahead in technology, make the latest electronic circuits or whatever. We actually need the skills of autistic people, and they need to be developed a whole lot better. And a lot of educators don't see that. And I looked inside of a machine today, very, very intricate, all hand-built parts, hand-machined parts that somebody had to just think up and invent.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And even in the computer system, you can use the internet like you are independence, like you use drugs and alcohol, and you can use with this programming and doing a lot of skills on the internet and even working for NASA.
Well, you can learn a lot of skills on the internet, but what I'm saying, and we've got 5 minutes left, and when we have to go to a meeting that's going to be in this conference room,
Okay.
Is kids aren't getting exposed to enough different things. Kids are not making the transfer into the working world. And we need to start teaching working skills young, chores for young autistic kids. When kids get around 11 years old, this is back in the days when we had kids delivering newspapers. We don't have those jobs anymore, but they need to be doing tasks for a boss that's outside the family. It could be a church volunteer job. It could be walking the neighbor's dog. working for somebody outside the family. And then as soon as they're legal, they need to get real jobs. Because working skills are not the same as academic skills. And I'm seeing too many smart people not making the transfer into the world of work. And what's made my life worthwhile is being a college professor is a really interesting job. Working on handling livestock's an interesting job. Also, there are things where I can help students to better themselves. That turns me on.
Interesting. So, thank you very much. We don't have much time. I will finish on Portuguese for our audience, but I'd like to thank you very much, Temple and Jason.
I'll talk a little bit about some job stuff, just super fast.
Okay.
Jason and I are opposites. With ADHD, he would be really good as an air traffic controller, and he'd be really, especially a busy airport, and he'd be really good at the McDonald's takeout window. I'd be horrible at both of those jobs, absolutely horrible. And for a lot of autistic kids, those kind of multitasking jobs need to be avoided. Another thing that will really help is checklists. Checklists for tasks that involve sequence. Let's say you have to take apart and clean the ice cream machine. Okay, so there's a checklist for how to take it apart, how to clean it, the steps, how to reassemble. Checklists, because long strings of verbal information are, I can't remember them.
Gone. They're gone. They come in and go right out.
Yeah, you need, so we're the same, we both need checklists, but you're gonna be the great takeout window person, the great air traffic controller. I'd be horrible at those jobs. But I'm gonna be really good at designing stuff, and there are different kinds of skills.
My brain is probably more close to Jason's brain.
Yeah, Jason said he'd get bored at a little tiny airport and wouldn't pay attention to 2 airplanes coming in. I'd rather have a whole bunch of them pay attention to.
Yeah, I need to be at Guarulhos instead of over there in Vignetto or whatever.
But you take autistic people, and my kind of mind is going to be very good at inventing and building and fixing mechanical equipment. The mathematical mind, programming computers, chemistry, making artificial intelligence systems, all kinds of things that involve mathematics. And then you have the word thinker. They'd be super good at specialized retail, selling cars. These are actual successes. Selling specialized business insurance, because they're recognized for their knowledge of a specialized product and help people get the right product that they need. And I want to see these kids get out there and get good jobs. I'm seeing, and we have to work them into it slowly. No surprises, but I just want to help get out there and do things. And one little tip on sensory, the kids, they don't like the vacuum cleaner. If they control it, they turn on the dreaded sound. They can often get to tolerate it. They turn the vacuum cleaner on and off. They honk the car horn. Where they make the noise, they can often learn to tolerate it better.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that. That's interesting.
But that works.
Okay.
Anything that's a noisemaker. Now, of course, I can't control your dog, but what you could do with that is an audio recording that the child can control.
Okay. So thank you very much, Temple. Thank you, Jason, for your time, and happy birthday for your 77 on August. And we are seeing each other again on our meeting on the 3rd Congress. Your talk will be at 25 right in the morning, and I hope to see you soon.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm really glad that we were able to get on and talk to you.
Thank you. Então, gente, essa foi Temple Graney e o Jason. Nós agradecemos muito a oportunidade de estarem conosco. O tempo deles realmente é muito difícil de conseguir, e a gente conseguiu essa palhinha para vocês. E, obviamente, convidando todos para o Congresso, do dia 22 ao dia 26. Podemos fazer as inscrições online ou presencial. Todos estaremos esperando vocês. Um grande beijo a todos. Bem-vindos a mais um Desbravando o Autismo. Fiquem com Deus e até a próxima.